What's up, everybody? It's Vintage House. We're back. We're just kind of bopping along to mix Honey Dijon at the Boiler Room. I'm playing Honey Dijon for a reason that you'll hear about in just a minute. But it has a lot to do with our guest tonight, JB McCauley, all the way from Australia. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Hi, everyone.
We're, of course, joined by Kevin McCauley, a.k.a. Mega. What's up, Kevin?
Hey, Lori. Hey, JB.
Hey, how you doing, Kev?
I'm good.
All right, I'm going to stop Honey. We'll talk about Honey later, but thank you. That was Honey Dijon, the Boiler Room, one of the mixes that made her famous. Well, so many things made her famous, but why did I bring her into tonight's energy? First of all, I love her and she's a friend, but also it's the reason that I met JB. So welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, thank you. And it's an absolute honor to be here on the program with you guys. Been a fan for a while as we've been streaming through the pandemic, and talking to people in Chicago really takes it back to the beginning for me. So one of those things that is extremely special in my life. So, you know, I couldn't be happier to be sitting alongside you guys and talking about Chicago house music, what it means to people like me and people like you.
Awesome. Awesome. Kevin?
We're just ordinary people.
Yeah.
We're just ordinary people who do
I think that's why house music is so successful as a genre, because it's filled full of magical people who live ordinary lives but contribute in a way that is just positive for everybody around them. That's
great. That's great.
Indeed. Well said. So
let's get started. I want to kind of jump in. You know, we are the Vintage House Show. We do this to celebrate and preserve, house music with the contributors. Most of the time we're doing Chicago, but this time we wanted to reach across the pond, way across the pond, down under the pond. I don't know how you describe it, but JB McCauley is an author. He is a house music DJ, amongst many things. He's also a DJ writer. And I love that title. I hope you don't mind it. I think I saw you use it somewhere. But you write about DJs, you interview DJs. One of my most favorite things to do is to talk to other people who interview folk, because they are some of the smartest folks that I know. And it takes an extraordinary amount of patience and perseverance, to try to get what you want, and to try to sift through that to create stories, because you write about them. So I want to start at the beginning and again, welcome you to the show. I know it's Thursday in Australia, right?
It certainly is. Yep, it's Thursday.
So for those of you who are wondering, it's 9 o'clock in Chicago and it's 2 p.m. Thursday in Australia.
What time zone would that be considered?
Welcome to the future is all I can say. Yeah. What time zone? Australian Standard Time. That's all I can tell you. On the eastern seaboard. So
okay.
We go through about 3 or 4 time zones in Australia.
Okay.
Don't quote me.
Wow, that's amazing. So I'd love to start from the beginning. You do so many things, and I want to get into what you're doing now with Bondi Radio and you're DJing there, you're interviewing folks. I know you don't get much sleep, I'm guessing, because you seem like you're very busy. But start at the beginning. You're from England.
Yeah, originally grew up in London, and started going. So when house music first appeared in the UK, it was very it was in the pop charts. So we're talking about Steve Silk Hurley and Jesse Saunders and people like that with all of their original music that came out in the late 80s. And in the background of that, there was rave culture, which I got fairly heavily involved in. And it wasn't so much the house music that we know today. It had a much harder edge to it, and it was all about being decadent and living a hedonistic lifestyle. But early in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, I moved to Portugal and spent 4 years living there, and that exposed me to different types of music in terms of Latin influence and things like that. And I started getting into that more groovier style of house music. and playing in nightclubs there, and just learning the ropes really of how to be a proper DJ, because there's nothing like having a residency for 6 hours a night, 7 days a week, to teach you how to play decent quality music that can take people on a journey. And not everybody's going to like house music in that environment, so you've got to be able to morph into different styles and give people something that will just give them a point of difference to what they need to do and what they need to hear. Plus the fact, if the dance floor is full all night long, the owner gets very annoyed, because the one thing they're not doing is drinking.
You know, that's not something we talk about a lot. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, that's a great point. I was just going to harp on the point JB made about really educating the audience, right? That's a DJ's, a good DJ's prerogative, but many other DJs will say, right, you must do that. You must be willing to introduce music beyond what is the familiar and what, you know, styles people are expecting. Would you agree or disagree with that, JB?
No, I think that's fully understood by people who, like I said, when you're working in that residency environment, and you have those long sets that you can play, you have the chance to experiment and give people what they want. What I feel like today is to the detriment of DJs in general is the 1 hour, 2 hour sets. And they don't get a chance to work themselves in. They don't get a chance to really explore the territory of where they can go. And so basically it's 12 tracks, you're done, and you're really not given a clear representation of who you are or what you are as an artist or a DJ. And I think that's very difficult. And like I said, it's not the DJ's fault. It's the way the promotions are done these days. And, you know, I think that not being able to do that is the major restriction of why it doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm. I agree. You know, we talk about that a lot on this show, the value. Thanks, Leonard. We talk about the value of having a residency, and any DJ, it's the best thing that you could do, you know, whether or not you're getting paid or not, is to spend some time, you know, perfecting your craft and learning how to play a whole night. Just you know, not in and out.
And I think one of the other major things is people reading. Until you've worked in that environment and been able to read people without really knowing them, that's something that only comes with experience, because you know, that people reading and moving a crowd and hitting the right moments is not something that you can learn off the top of your head. It's something that you need within your crate, within your kit bag, to be able to deliver that. And like I said, when the younger kids are coming up and they only get their hour, and it's not their fault, but it's virtually impossible for them to be able to learn that skill. So they'll go in with 12 bangers, they'll play 12 bangers, and then they're gone. They don't have that opportunity, you know, like I was speaking to a DJ the other day, and we were talking about the difference between New York DJs and Baltimore DJs from back in the day, where New York DJs play the long set and, you know, like lead you in and paint that story. But Teddy Douglas was telling me, you're on from the minute you get on, it's bang. You go in there, but they're bang for 6 hours. And that's equally as difficult to do. But I think that's very hard for the young DJs coming up to learn that skill, because it's just not achievable for them in the current economic environment.
I wonder if people even want to hear that, though. I mean, you know, we've been talking to a lot of folks about this topic, you know, so the long sets versus the short sets, sort of the value of understanding, you know, how to play at different times of the night. So if you are only given 2 hours in your opening, you know, do you know how to move a room without playing all your bangers at 9 o'clock at night? You know, it's a different style of music. Can you do that? You know, and folks DJs may not be brave enough, or just have the experience, you know, to open a night and feel good about it.
Yeah, I think opening a set is a very particular skill, because you're there to curate the style, the atmosphere for the evening, without detracting from who's going to be headlining or something like that. So it's a really hard skill to be able to keep pace with that room and still deliver on what you want to deliver in terms of your music without detracting from those that come after you. And that only comes with knowledge.
And I think you have to also add the dimension that someone whose opening is also auditioning themselves, right, to become that headliner, right? Absolutely. So at some point they're wanting their set to be memorable enough to be asked to be, or at least somewhere else in the lineup, over time. So it's an audition as well when you have that opportunity.
It's a learning curve as well. So, everything in this business is a learning curve. And from every experience, you should take away something that can improve the way you play, the way you deal with people, just the way you communicate with the dance floor or even with the promoter or anything like that. We all know that to get ahead in the DJ game, you've got to hustle, and you've got to hustle like mad. And it's all as a result of the networks that you may build up over a course of time. And to do that, you need to be in the game. And I call it a game, but it's a business. You need to be in that business of making connections and constantly improving what you do.
It's okay to use vernacular here with the Vintage House fam.
Vernacular is a nice way to put it. People use all kinds of lingo here.
Especially me.
Go for it.
Leonard, thanks for your comment. Having an extensive music selection enables that. You are correct.
Yeah, so and the knowledge of it.
Absolutely, and knowing how to play that. But here's the question I have for you. Do we have a lot more DJs because technology allows for more people to understand, how to play tracks back to back to back perfectly? Are there enough places for people to even have residencies? Is that a thing of the past?
Absolutely not. With the gentrification that's gone on, like in New York, Chicago, London, Sydney, places like that, most of those nightclubs in the areas that I spoke about are in prime real estate. So, landlords want the maximum bang for their buck. So, those nightclubs are being shut down through one reason or another. Look at Cielo in New York, in the Meatpackers District, one of the best nightclubs in America as far as I was concerned. And it went by the wayside. So having those opportunities within a nightclub environment is difficult, but you got to make your own happy, don't wait for the nightclub to come to you. Make your own scene. Do it wherever you can find it. And, nobody's going to come to you and offer you the keys to the castle. You need to go in yourself and make your own happy, like get some friends together, start the parties off, start a following, look at the chosen few DJs in Chicago. Started off with 30 people behind a garden shed, I understand, or a park shed or something. And now it's 40,000 people. Yeah. From little things, big things grow.
Now, in all fairness, that was they did draw many crowds, in the early 80s. And that party where they had 30 people was a reunion of some of those folks, and they built from that. But you're completely correct. You got to make your own lane.
It's like the same with the magazine. Like I've been writing copy and promos and doing a lot of stuff in the background in the industry for many, many years. And it got to the stage in my life where I was fed up having my stuff being corrected by other people and edited by other people. And I wanted to tell the house story the way I thought it should be told, with love and affection, and telling people, informing the general public about people's history, how they got to where they're going and what they're doing now. And so I think that is a very important part of house music history and house music in general, to let people who are coming into the scene know about what's gone before and what's coming ahead, and do it in a way that tells that whole story and paints that picture. And like I said, I made my own happy. I didn't want to keep working for people that were taking my sunlight. I wanted to be able to stand in the sun and share the sunlight with everybody I thought was deserving of it. And so, like I said, make your own happy.
Yeah, you've done that really well. I want to talk a little bit before we get into your writing because I want to spend some time on that. I want to talk about your DJ journey because you started off in England. You really started spinning in Portugal, where you said you had some residencies there.
Mm,
And was there a house music scene in Portugal?
absolutely. Absolutely. And the reason why is you need to understand that Portugal is a holiday destination for English. And
Hmm.
the English and the Germans and the Dutch, they all go there on holiday. So when house music started exploding there, so did when house music started exploding in those countries. When people came on holiday, they wanted to do the same thing. So like it was an easy transition. What was a harder transition was when I came to Australia, and I wasn't really in a place where I could go out and DJ the way I wanted to. And I was in a marriage and had to dedicate myself to the relationship, which
Hmm.
didn't work out in the end. And that's when I came back to the fold and started working within the industry again, started writing. Um, and I'm not a mainline DJ. I'm just a guy that sits around the back and does his thing when asked and gets up to it. But my main passion is radio and writing. So, but the DJing thing has always evolved along those lines. But it's very hard, like you said, these days because most of the clubs have shut down, and we're moving to that bar environment
Hmm.
where people play bars rather than clubs, and that's a very difficult challenge for a lot of guys in the industry.
That happens here in Chicago. Kevin?
as well. Yeah, no, I was agreeing with that. What we see as the emerging trend, and
Hmm.
Chicago in particular has been a very difficult city for clubs and their longevity, certainly, which is why things like the the create your own space uh, that you suggested is really the way to go. It has happened. It is facilitated and fostered the continued growth of house music and house music experiences. Of course, sans the pandemic, right? The pandemic has moved us all into the virtual space.
Right.
Yeah.
But not in Australia.
We've had periods. We've had periods of hard lockdown. Especially Melbourne went through it twice. Sydney went through it once, and we still have massive restrictions on, especially in New South Wales, which is Sydney, on what we can do and what we can't do. Masks on indoors, no dancing, no
Mhm.
singing, no mingling. That's in Sydney. And then when you go on to you go down to Melbourne, they've just had an outbreak there. So I'm not too sure of the restrictions, but they've just come on board. So it goes up and down. But because
Okay.
Australia's been very risk averse, let's say, when something comes out, just one or two cases, that's it, slam, the door goes down. And
Hmm.
it's been frustrating for business, especially because they don't know which way's up, which way's down. But we're lucky. We've been able to play on occasion
Hmm.
and play out and play well, but it's still not back to where it was, but
Right.
hopefully, once the vaccine gets rolled out and we get some pretty good protection or herd immunity against it, we can all move back to a much happier place. But
And,
Yeah, I hear you.
is there a lot of activity in the internet and hosting virtual sessions
oh
and the
yeah,
like?
and there has been over the past up until now where people have started to play out more. But
Yes.
before that, there was a lot of live streaming, hosting. For me though, personally, live streaming, watching a DJ in a room, uh, uh, is fills me with a bit of depression, I should say, because it just reminds me. It just
Oh
reminds
no.
me of how much we miss
Yeah.
being in that community where you're all dancing together, all singing together, and having the same the same joyous moments at the same time. So when you're looking at a guy live streaming or a girl live streaming, I should say girl, I say woman live streaming. Um, it just fills me with a little bit of sadness because it reminds me of all the things we miss. And I've actually never done it. One, because I think I've got a good head for radio, this is the first time you've ever got me to do a live stream.
I know.
In a
I
broadcast
was wondering if you
environment.
had done that before.
No.
Well, I feel very honored. He's
Oh.
making his debut.
Yes, it's not something that I'm 100% comfortable with.
You're doing
But
great.
oh, look, you know, I can talk to the days long once you get me. If I just ignore my head on the screen in front of me, I'm fine.
So I want to get into to your writing. You know, you've written a book, The King of Sunday Morning. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And you tell us about your book.
I love that title, by the way.
Yeah. Well, that used to be my DJ name back in the day.
Okay.
Primarily because when everybody was flaking out on a Sunday morning, I'd be going, right, where are we going now? So that's how I got given the name. But the book itself is like a fictional account of a DJ that gets involved in the wrong thing and has to escape his life on the cusp of you know, like fame and fortune in the UK, and then has to go abroad and hide, and he's chased by gangsters. But it's essentially it sounds like a big gangster story, but it's essentially a love story about a man that's pursuing his dreams and pursuing the love of his life. But yeah, it did pretty well. There was talk at one stage about it being taken up as a film script, and I should really get back to doing that. But it was a really worthwhile pursuit, and it was just a story. It's just a story about one man trying to find his dreams late in life, and seeing how he got there, and doing it all wrong, But I'd like to say, before anybody has a look at it, it is full of profanity, and it's got a bit of violence in it. So if you're liking your Mills and Boone and your romance novels and things like that, stay away from this.
No, it sounds like a great fictional journey that I'm sure a lot of people will find that it resonates for them.
Oh, I don't think so.
Now we have to read the book. We gotta see what he's talking about here.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's a fictional tale, and it revolves around the criminal underworld. There's a lot of drugs involved in it, but it's very English and very Australian. But when it first came out, Americans loved it too. They thought it was like a Guy Ritchie novel, like Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, or that sort of thing. And it took me a while to write. It took me a while to work out all the tentacles of the story to be able to wrap them in an overall, because it takes place over periods of time and jumps around a bit deliberately to try and keep the reader guessing. But yeah, it was a solid years worth or 18 months worth of work getting that ready for publication.
Well, people can buy this book, correct, on Amazon?
They certainly can. Yes,
I'm going to pick up my copy. I love it. We have so many writers. It's amazing. There's a lot of good stuff out there.
Yeah. For me, writing is something you could. I think it's like music and things like that. You can teach people how to write, but it's like painting by numbers. If you know what I mean. Like that's not. It's either in you or it's not.
I get that.
If you're an emotional writer and you rely on connecting people like DJs do with music, it's either in you or it's not. If it's not, people can tell you're dialing it in.
I hear you. So you have interviewed so many DJs. I want to hear about your process. You know, why do you select? Who do you select? And who have you select that maybe a Chicago audience would be familiar with? And then I want to talk a little bit about some of those interviews.
Yeah. So my first interview on Switched On Music was with Ron Carroll, who incidentally is going to be my first interview also on My House Radio that I've started working on for this Sunday, which is another program that I do as well as Bondi Radio. But Ron was the first one. I've done Chippy, Alan King, Jesse Saunders. Cool. I'll have to go back through the website and have a look. But we've done a lot of Terry Hunter, of course. We've done a lot of the chosen few DJs, primarily DJ Pierre. which I believe was Chicago when he first started. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. See, look, there you go. I'm having to remember stuff off the top of my head. But we've done a lot, and I love Chicago. Chicago, when we came there, was so good to us as a family. Like my wife and I came there, we had to leave our kids at home. But like Chicago gets a bad rep from people in the States and from its own town, and it gets a bad image everywhere. But
Does
I've got
it?
to say, yeah,
What's the
because
image of Chicago and Australia? What do people think of us?
gun violence.
Gun violence.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, see, that's what makes the news, right? The news is a place which celebrates misery, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Yeah. Death, devastation, and destruction are the first 4 minutes of every newscast.
Yeah.
That's a global phenomenon.
And the only happy you get is a fluffy dog at the end or a cat, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, like I'm sorry to bring it back to puerile things, but that's about basically it. And it's about spreading fear and the loss of hope, I think, a lot within the news services these days. So Chicago, from the outside looking in, is known for a lot of homicides, a lot of violence, and things like that. But it's not until you go there that you know that that's just a fraction of how the city itself is. Now, I know we were there during a particularly joyful time, which is the Chosen Few picnic weekend, and there's hardly any violence there during that week, and we were treated with so much love and attention by people who were there, from the police chief and the congressman down. We were speaking to people and having the time of our lives, and I've never felt so much love from a community as I did from the Chicago community on the South Side. It was one of the most enjoyable experiences of mine, my wife's life. And I think that's the side of Chicago that needs to be promoted to the rest of the world. Yes, you've got problems with within the community, but there is so much more that needs to be celebrated than denigrated, if you know what I mean. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah, I don't want to get into too much of this, but I am curious about just life in Australia versus, what we'd experience here. And where in Australia are you? And do you find it like, can you leave your door open at night? I mean, we hear all kinds of stories. Tell us about
it. Look, it depends where you live, just like anywhere else.
Sure.
It's a beautiful place to live. I'd be lying if I said otherwise. The people are some of the best people in the world. Pretty laid back, even though we follow the rules quite a bit. Very, very laid back. All along the seaboard is obviously seaside culture, surfing culture, beachside culture. But we live in between Sydney and Canberra in the countryside because my son's got a disability and he wanted to be around the countryside, so we came here. We're about 2 hours from Sydney and about an hour from Canberra, but and we still get access to whatever we want to do in the big city, wherever we want to go. And even in the city where life can be fast paced and everybody's in a rush to get everywhere, the first thing that I noticed when I first came to Australia, which was in 1994, was that you'd walk along the street and they'd smile at you or say good morning to you. And coming from London, where everybody's got their head down and just shuffling along, it was one of the weirdest experiences of my life. They are very open. I've got to say, one of the most supportive people that I've ever come across. And the weather helps, like it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
That always helps. JB,
I'm totally jealous of the weather there because is it always warm?
No. We get winters, but they're not. Then like where we live, we get proper winters. It gets down to 0 degrees.
Okay.
And so we go from one extreme to another. It gets really cold in the winter where I live, and then gets boiling hot in the summer because it's inland. But there's no humidity, whereas on the coast in Sydney, in the summers, it can get very, very humid, very hot and sticky. But it's a great lifestyle. It's a lifestyle choice living in Australia. I think if you come from another country, it just free and fair. Everybody gives everybody a fair go, as we like to say over here. And if you want to succeed, the opportunity is there for you.
Yeah. So let's get back to your DJing a little bit. You started, when did you start spinning records?
About 1990.
So 1990. Okay. And who were you listening to?
Oh, like, so back then it was all rave music. So, you know, like if I can pick out tracks that were coming out at the time. So it was like, you know, like Two Unlimited, for example, really poppy stuff to the more acid house stuff like Future Tracks and people like DJ Pierre and Mr. Fingers and things like that. You know, like the house music anthem by Marshall Jefferson, the wonderful Marshall Jefferson. You know, that was one of the first things I picked up. But because so I'm going to say we would play cheesy stuff because we had to appeal to everybody. One of my favorite tracks of all time still is Rosala's Everybody's Free. You know, you know, like that vocal just when it drops, and then you got Bizarre Incorporated playing with knives. These are all like mid rave tracks. You know what I'm saying, and so. But from there, it was that was where I started doing all that faster stuff. But then, like I said, doing the residency, especially early doors, you get the chance to experiment with music that you'd never, because there's no one there. 10 o'clock at night, there's like 3 or 4 people in there, as opposed to the end of the night. So, you know, like I'd be playing stuff like JD's Plastic Dreams, the original, which was off the scale, you know, and
it was great.
And that,
it's hypnotic.
And because it's such a long intro, that you really do get the chance to use that blend in ways that you can't do with the shorter, choppier tracks, if you know what I mean. So that introduced me to a different style of mixing rather than just, you know, like 8 bars, 12 bars, whatever it is, 16 bars, and then just dropping something. And so, like I said, that's where you get to experiment with those really long blends and use acapellas over the top and just learn your craft. So that's the sort of stuff that I was playing then. And then, like I said, when I came to Australia, I gave the industry away, although I was still listening to the music for a while. It wasn't until I started getting out again after a separation that I started listening to all the more housey melodic stuff and getting into that real groove, you know, of sulfuric records. And things like that label, Early Defected, you know, all of that stuff really influenced me. And it's just that soulful element that gets your heart and mind and your body and moves you from the hips. And let's face it, if it doesn't move you from the hips,
forget it.
It's not house music. It's not house music.
Yeah, you bring back some memories with Plastic Dreams. I had a residency. It was actually one of the first really long residencies that I had. It was like 91, where I was the DJ from 9 to 5, like the opposite, not 9 in the morning, 9 at night to 5 in the morning. And you could play that whole song, you know, and people danced the whole time. It's like a 10-minute record or so. I don't remember exactly how long. It was pretty long.
Yeah, and I remember playing it to somebody in Australia for the first time. We went to a nightclub and I got on board and I slung it on there. And the guy was just transfixed by it. He just went, "What is this?"
Yeah.
I said, "This is like the modern version of Lil Louis French Kiss." You know what I mean? Like
it's a really good comparison. Very much so.
I was spending in Boston at the time and had a residency at a club inside of a Holiday Inn on Route 9 there called The Matrix. And definitely it was, regrettably, sometimes I had to use that song to step out of the DJ booth in return.
Yeah,
everybody was okay with that.
Yes, but you know, people were still grooving.
Hey, listen, this is an era that we don't talk about a lot. Like the early 90s, there was some incredible music that came out of that period, because it really was, you know, kind of the next phase in house music that became so expansive. You know, you had a lot of stuff out of England, sort of that neo soul mixture with house, and you know, I think about like the Crystal Waters and you know, things like Plastic Dreams. It was an era that we don't give enough credit to.
Yeah, there was a lot of invention going on there. There was a lot of new barriers that were being broken down.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of it had to do with the underground network in New York at the Sound Factory bar, with a lot of the DJs that went there who migrated to the UK, like Louis Vega,
Mhm.
Todd Terry, and things like that. Masters at Work, all that sort of stuff was a driving force behind
Mhm.
how the rest of the world perceived house music. So instead of being this like bleepy, ravey, acid house sort of thing, it actually migrated into this gospel influenced, blues based house music that really did reach out. And with the divas that sang over the top of them, how could you not be inspired to dance?
Yeah. Who do you like? What singers?
Oh, I'm a classic. Barbara Tucker, Inaya Day, Michelle Weeks, Dawn Tallman. No, I mean, it doesn't have to be house music either. Is it Yolanda Adams? I'm going to pronounce it wrong.
Yes.
Yeah.
But like her voice is just wonderful, and it's like there's voices that can sound reedy or very pedestrian sometimes in house music, but those ones that have got that rich background of either going to have a formal education, like Terry B. Uh, Terry B's commented on this because Anaya Day came out of the New York School of the Performing Arts
Yes.
and works in things like that. So, but there's something, I just don't know what it is. There's something in that. There's got to be something in that soulful voice that really
Mhm.
does show
It's
that you
gospel.
Yeah, it is. It's
The
fundamental. It's
church.
gospel, right?
Yeah.
It is the
Yeah.
church.
And
I think
It,
everybody you mentioned sort of, I don't know if all of them, but most of them
yeah,
had a church back. We were talking to Carla Prather the other day, and
yeah,
it's a church background. We're gonna have to do a
absolutely.
show about like the gospel roots of house music.
And yeah,
I,
the influence on house.
You know,
Absolutely.
it's
I
huge.
think. I think so. If you look at it from a, without being too nerdy, if you look from it from a linear context, you've got uh, say you've got the Negro spirituals that came uh, out of the slavery period within America's like back in the day when it was disgusting. I'll
It's the
say
only
that anyway.
American music.
Yeah, but then it morphed into blues music, and then
Right.
then it morphed into Motown, and then it morphed into disco, and then we had house, and then through that journey, you've had the church supporting that music
Hmm.
all the way through, and I think
Don't forget
it's
rock.
yeah, rock and roll, yes, but the gospel element of it has been retained by soul and
Yeah.
Motown. It's in the song structure, I think,
Yeah.
more than
Yeah.
anything else,
Yeah.
and
Reason I
you know,
say that, JB, is that a lot of people skip over rock and roll with black music, and you can't. There's so much you wouldn't believe it, but a lot of the early influences, the really early influence in rock and roll, came from like watching black musicians in church
absolutely.
playing their guitars.
Yeah.
So we talk about Sister Rosetta Tharpe, one of my favorites. She
Mm.
influenced a lot of rock and roll guys, who
Yeah.
were in Europe and in the United States alike. And that
Yeah,
came from church music, believe it or not.
yeah,
Oh,
unfortunately, we could go even off on a greater tangent because the Afro Latin and jazz influences were also critical as they emerged at different eras of American history, and have
absolutely.
all poured into what is house music today.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree. It's I mean, like, it's a melting pot of cultures. Like, house music to me represents life in all its diversity. It doesn't matter what
It's a good
color,
way to put it.
sexuality, creed you are. You're all
Yeah.
welcome in our house,
yeah,
and that comes with the
the
musical
best.
territory as well. That comes with the musical territory as well. It doesn't matter where the music comes from. We will adopt it and take it on board and produce something that represents the best quality of humanity, I believe.
That's interesting. So the music is a lot like the people. Like everybody is welcome, right?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, we talk about music being the universal language, right? And that's what it comes down to.
that's awesome. Thanks, Reginald. He's saying the WTTW will show a special on the Black Church this month, so we'll be paying attention to that. Leonard's saying a book needs to be written on that. I agree. And I want to ask you about books because there have been quite a few, I shouldn't say quite a few, there have been a few DJ books or DJ books written by and about DJs. Are there any that you like? We talk a lot about Michael Salkind's book, um, and Do You Remember House, and Jesse
Mm.
Saunders' book, of course, in their
Mm.
own words. Not a whole lot, but any that you're familiar with and that you want to talk about.
Look, there's been a few, and I'm not going to remember them off the top of my head. But there was, but there's. Oh, actually, I'll tell you what I do. Like, hang on a second, I'm gonna have to duck away.
It's going to his library.
It's nice and handy.
Yeah, no. It's one of my research books, and it's called "What Kind of House Party Is This?"
Wow,
and it's one of those books from back in the day. Like, it's written a fair while ago. You can tell because the DJ profile pictures are pretty awful. But it tells the story, and so this is how I hold people to account, because it tells the story from back in the day about how they felt about house music. So they can't rewrite history because I've got this one. But in here, it's got people. Oh, I haven't got my glasses on. I'm gonna have to put one.
It's one of your books.
It's not mine, but it's one of the books I have. You know,
yeah,
oh yeah, absolutely. But we've got Alfredo, Paul Oakenfield from the United States. Let's say we've got. They're all English DJs, but I have to find the list now. Can't find them.
Anybody from Chicago in that book?
Yeah, yes, they have. They got Adonis in here.
Okay.
They've got. We've got obviously quite a few New York DJs in it. It's got Larry Heard, DJ Pierre, Chippy, Adonis, Farley Jackmaster Funk.
Yeah, I think I'm familiar with that
Silk
book.
Hurley.
Yeah.
It's very expensive. It costs
because there's a lot of pictures, right?
Yeah, it's expensive because of the U.S. Postal Service getting it to Australia. Okay. It cost me like $120 to get it posted.
Oh, wow.
It's actually on Amazon for new for $1,355. $1,035. Yeah. Okay, you can buy it used though for 160.
Lauren says it's at the library, so take. There you go.
Jonathan Fleming.
I knew you had shown that to me. Lauren made me do my homework. She made me meet her at the library one day, and she's like, "Here's these are the few books that we have. Read them." Yeah. I'm like, okay. So yes,
I'm going to be biased because I helped Jesse edit in their own words.
Good.
So I'm responsible for a small part of that wonderful journey where people. That's what I like about that. Most DJs' journeys are similar. They don't really stand out from anything else. But Jesse's book is really a book by the people for the people.
Yeah,
and that's why I like it so much, because it's personal accounts by people that haven't basked in the fame or the glory. So for them, it is just about the music or the enjoyment or the night out. And it literally is in their own words. So that's been very enjoyable for me. I've got a stack of them, but they're all upstairs.
Well,
there was one that spoke about the early days of DJing in the UK, which was really good. I think there's one by Bill Brewster.
Yes.
Which was very good too. But the biggest problem with books these days is people having the time to read. I think the pandemic has allowed people to be at peace once again and not live such busy lives. And then, perhaps I will get round to reading that book. But up until now, publishing books, unless you're talking about a self-help book, which they seem to sell like hotcakes, other books are a risk, an investment risk for publishing houses if you're not already a known name. So most people will follow the self-publishing route, and that's just it's great, and it can be very rewarding, but it's a very, very hard process when you haven't got someone behind you supporting you. You know, it's like having an agent as a DJ. You need
Are you
someone
writing
behind.
another book? Are you writing another book?
I'm thinking. I have got some ideas. I'm always thinking. You know, my problem is that I never switch off. And but people need to understand that writing a book is not just a 5-minute thing. You know, like it takes 18 months of refinement. You might get your basic storyline out, and depending on what you're doing, it will take about 18 months of refinement for you to get to a place where you think it may be ready to go. And then it takes another year of editing, you know, because you've got to really hit the right tone. It depends what tone you're trying to set, for example. But as with most writing, it's a very personal journey. And like Leonard said there, right, self-publishing is the way to go. He's self-published too.
Yes, and Leonard has a book too.
Yeah, which I've got as well. I have that one too.
So which way will you go? Should you write another book? Will you continue down the fiction or non-fictional path?
This time it will be a non-fiction. Okay. It will be. I can't reveal too much because somebody will nick it. But it's a non. It's gonna be. It's not going to be about me. It's going to be a non-fictional book, and more of a historical journey of what DJs and artists and producers currently go through. But if anybody knows a good publisher out there, I would love to have one on board to help me do the heavy lifting, because the content's all there. The heavy lifting is the problem.
All the publishers out there watching Vintage House Show tonight, there's an open invitation.
There you go. And Darlene, hey, what's up, Darlene? Simon Reynolds has a few good books. Is that an author, Simon, or a DJ?
It's a publisher.
Publisher. Okay. Oh,
no, I'm asking.
I don't know. I don't know, lady. You're too smart for us. Okay. One more comment.
I think sometimes.
Yes. Go ahead, JB.
I was going to say, well, one of the biggest problems with books about DJing or music is that they can tend to take themselves a little bit too seriously. What we might call in the UK, they're a bit chin strokey, you know, like instead of just getting to the point, they will talk about the agony and the ecstasy and everything like that, which is great to a certain extent. But I think especially now at this moment in time, people want to read books about hope and happiness rather than despair. We've got enough despair in our life over the last 12 months, 14 months. Now it's time to look forward and grab opportunities and celebrate life.
No doubt. And I think this point was made earlier as well, that this music is, that tends to be the central theme, right? Of joy, elevation, aspiration, unification. House music has made the lives of most of those who listen to it, who dance to it, an escape opportunity, escaping from these realities, whether it's our job, our circumstance, the pandemic. Music does an amazing thing in taking us away from all that. So it would be great to have books about the same kind of things that are put into the music that we all love.
Yeah, I think Darlene put up one called Generation Ecstasy, which I can highly recommend as well, about raving culture.
Yeah,
that's one of those things. Like there's lots of stories to be told about that period in life, and I'm pretty sure I've forgotten more than most during that time frame. Stopping drinking about 20 years ago really helped with that. Now I have much clearer recollection, but there's periods of my life where I was out partying that I just can't remember. For me, like I said, Chicago house music has sustained me for 30 years, giving me joy, giving me a lot of hope for the future. But one of the things that I want to see more of, especially in Chicago and New York, and I was talking about this with DJ Disciple today, is about getting more millennials and Generation Zers into the business of making house music and putting their slants on it and giving their stamp of approval on what we're doing by seeing what we've done and allowing them to come in and go, right, this is what you need. These are the skills you need. Take it. This is what we're giving you. Let's take it and do something with it that makes it yours. I think that's very, very important. I know house music, in particular in America, is a difficult sell amongst some communities because R&B, hip hop, and pop are the major drivers there. But I don't think it's too much of a stretch for some of these R&B producers, and I'm seeing a little bit of that lately, where they're moving into the house music arena and dabbling in that form of music. So I think if we can give opportunities to those that are coming up in terms of production and shining a light on their work, I think that's something that's very important too.
I have a question for you as an interviewer. I do like talking to folks who get other people's stories because you really develop an arc. Like you see, where things came from and where they're going, and you have a sort of a much higher level vision, of the community than most people. What are the kinds of things that you've learned from interviewing other DJs that stand out for you?
Some of them can be very nerdy, because a lot of them started DJing by collecting music and, like collecting weird and wonderful tracks that nobody else would really listen to, and developing the art of DJing in isolation rather than doing it in front of loads of people. So some of them can be socially awkward to some extent, and DJing has been their release to get them out of that environment of seclusion which they've done. But I literally have found the higher up the evolutionary chain you go, generally the nicer people are, and the ego is being thrown out of the window. Like I can reference people like Louis Vega, who is just one of the nicest guys you've ever wished to meet. Terry Hunter from Chicago is just such a lovely guy. And in any other industry, these people at the top of their game would be maybe treating you with a bit of contempt because they think they're a bit better than they actually are. But that's one of the things I've generally found. If you're interested in somebody in house music, they will let you share their light.
Can I just jump in and ask, is that point leads to this question? Do you think that contributes to why there might not be as there's a different level and type of commercialization that these DJs achieve? Do you think that personality has something to do with that?
They're successful because of that personality, or they're not as successful as they should be because of that personality?
The latter.
Yeah, look, I think there's a lot of historical bias from the rest of America towards traditional house music. Let's face it, it came out of the Afro American gay community primarily initially, and then got adopted by a broader blacker community. I think there is certainly a certain amount of stigma attached to house music by the rest of the population in the States, which is completely different compared to the Europe, where everybody loves it. Like Louis Vega said to me, he couldn't believe it when he first started playing house music in the UK. He'd been playing in New York for a while, where nearly everybody was Hispanic or black, and then he come to the UK and nearly everybody was white, and it was a complete role reversal for him. And I think so. Obviously, in Chicago, there's a lot of love for Chicago house music within Chicago itself. And the same in New York, but it's not broad, in my opinion, from the outside looking in, it's not broadly recognized by other sectors of the community. So I don't know if it's really because the DJs are less aggressive in their marketing or anything like that. I just don't think within America itself there's the audience, that the audience isn't quite right there at the moment. Whereas then that's why all the guys come over to Europe or come down to Australia, because that's where the money is for them.
Fair enough. I think that's an important observation, and we hear that thematically a lot. A lot of our guests on the show talk about having to go elsewhere outside of the country to perform.
I don't think you realize how lucky you are. You know, like we were going around Chicago, we could go and see Chippy play, Stacey Kidd play, Ron Carroll play, all in a little bar, you know, like $5, $10, $20 to go in, you know, and we go and see these absolute legends of American DJing in Chicago. And for us, it was like hero worshipping, because we got up to see these people up close and personal. And yet and so I don't think you realize how much that translates across the pond to other countries, because, you know, when they go overseas and they play overseas, you know, like Terry Hunter, loved and adored, you know, like wherever he plays, you know, full packed house, and people are paying big money to go and see him. And it just struck me as kind of odd when I was in Chicago that you've got all these people like Paul Johnson, etc., playing, and you go like, man, you know, like I just walked in off the street and walked into the bar, and there's Ron playing, and you know, like, I'm like, geez, man, you know.
It's a little bit like house music Toontown here. Like they're just walking around the street. Nobody cares, you know.
We take it for granted.
We do take it for granted. We take it for granted.
And I think you shouldn't. I think that's one of the things you should. I know you. I know your mayor is a big supporter of the house community, but it really does need to be elevated as really over the last 30 years being one of the #1 exports to the rest of the world that your city is responsible for.
Well, our former president, 44, was also
drop the mic.
But I think what he said is so important, you know, like we don't tend to think of like the export that it is from Chicago, and people just take it completely for granted. So I want to bronze what you said and like, you know, set it on a trophy somewhere. It's just so important, you know. I don't know how to make that happen. Maybe we need people like you from other countries, you know, to remind folks, you know.
Like I said, I don't think you realize how loved you are from the outside looking in as an industry. And, you know, like I said, the house music addicts can be a bit nerdy, but we all know where it started. Right? We all, and to be honest, there was a lot of cogs in the wheel to get it to the global brand that it is now. You know, like you can't ignore New York, you can't ignore Ibiza, you can't ignore London and Manchester. All of those things need to be thrown in the mix to be able to qualify it as the global brand it is now. But without you, it would never have happened. It might have happened in a different form, but without Chicago, without people like Jesse, without people like Jamie Principle, without people like that, you know, like picking up the baton and turning house music into something was listenable, danceable, manageable, and providing the seeds for development for the rest of the world. Without Chicago, wouldn't have happened.
Wow, you have said a lot, JB. Listen, you know, an hour has flown by, as it always does. Can you believe it?
No. And no one stuck up any stickers about my head, so that's all good.
Oh, you are great. Thank you so much. I'm so glad we were.
I got my Illinois hat on.
You do. All right, we got to get you a White Sox hat.
Yeah.
All righty, there you go. So I'm going to bring on a couple guests to the stream. We got Jason. We got DJ Magic Mike. What's happening, fellas?
Hey,
Justin. Sorry, I said Jason. Thinking of someone else. Say Justin. So we had a great time talking to our friend in Australia, JB McCauley. I just want to give it up for you one more time. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you. We love you. We love what you do.
Thank you.
And if you haven't had a chance to connect with JB, can you tell folks how they can hear more about what you're doing?
Right. So there's a couple of things I do. So Switched On Music is the website, www.switchedonmusic.com, which Laurie has appeared on. And you can also go on our Facebook page, which is most probably the easiest way to get to it, is Switched On Music. So just remember that. And we also do a weekly program on Bondi Radio. And now starting this Sunday, I will be broadcasting on My House Radio Network out of the UK to London and the rest of the world. So things are looking up. We've got some massive interviews coming out over the couple of weeks. There's not enough hours in the day, but we must stress upon you that it is a journalistic website. You have to read. Don't go there expecting to see YouTube videos or, like anything like that. It is really a throwback to the way writing about music was done back in the day. Proper
and we
journalism.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We love it.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. Good luck to the guys that are coming on after me. I hope you have a good stream.
Yeah.
But
they're going to be on Twitch. So you can Justin, why don't you introduce us to our guests, and then we're going to let everybody go. You're going to follow up. We got Magic Mike. Is that right?
Yep, DJ Magic Mike. That's who we have on next, Mr. Mike Palos.
Yes.
So I just want to start by saying we had an amazing first month of the Spotlight, introducing the Spotlight this year in 2021. We actually just created a Vintage House Show Twitch, which I want to invite all you guys who are watching, all you guys who are continuously supporting us in Chicago house music history, to like and subscribe that page, so that way you guys can keep up with our streams, our Vintage House Show streams, as well as our Spotlight streams. And tonight we have our previous streams all from last month. You guys also should vote on the poll so we can choose our chosen Spotlight DJ for the month, and that way we can choose who kind of won the month, and then going forward we'll keep doing the same thing, but it'll all be through our Twitch, which is at the Vintage House Show. And today we have DJ Mike, DJ Magic Mike Palos. We got some social media for him. I want you guys to be able to connect with him at Twitter at com_flashback. His Instagram, Magic Mike 511, and you can find him on Facebook as Chicago DJ Magic Mike. Welcome.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Appreciate you being here. Yes. And so are you going on now, Mike? Are we about to hear you? All right. So we're going to make the switch to Twitch. Do I have that right? The switch to Twitch?
Yes.
Peace.
At the Vintage House Show, right?
Yes, exactly. And it is also on our Facebook page where some of you guys are streaming from. So just go ahead and click that link and you'll see his stream. Do we have, Mike, do you got anything you want to say before we get into your nice set?
Thank you guys for having me. Thank you. You guys are going to love it. It takes you on a trip in time through house music.
All right,
guys. Well, thank you. We thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for tuning in. We will be back next week with Mega's show, Philosophical Grooves. Who's coming up next, Mega?
We've got actually an incredibly vintage group. Master C&J will be our guest on next week's episode of the Vintage House Show. So tune in.
All right. Thanks again, JB. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week. Peace, everybody.
Thanks, Lori. Thanks, JB.
Thank you.
Go DJ Magic Mike.